side. Thank you, guys. And if you haven't already, please take out your phones, take out your cameras. I work terribly fast through this section. All right, hope you guys are ready. This is where the magic is going to start. And don't worry about the shadow, that's just where they found my body. And it doesn't matter where I point the light, you can still see the bottom of this place. And this is something that we call the infinity view or infinity well, because as you can tell, the lower I point the light, the deeper this place seems to get. And again, it doesn't matter where I point the light, the effect still persists throughout the surface of the water inside the cistern. So I omitted or didn't really mention the amount of water that we have inside the cistern at all times, so that everyone here can get a chance and play a bit of a guessing game in regards to how tall the water is in here. Would anybody like to volunteer and answer in regards to miles, meters, feet?
10 feet tall.
10 feet tall. Anybody else?
Yeah.
6 inches. Anybody else?
Million gallons.
Million gallons. We need inches, centimeters.
Oh, inches.
Inches, centimeters, feet.
1 foot.
1 foot. 24 inches. Got it. Anybody else?
3 feet.
3 feet. Going once, going twice on the Price is Right. Alrighty. You might be surprised to learn we only have about 10 inches of water here at all times. So really what you're looking at is just purely a reflection of the ceiling on the surface of the water.
So
But
that's
despite...
all you need to keep the balance on the
Yes. So despite that we only have 10 inches, this amount of water still accounts for close to 250,000 gallons of water. And that helps us to keep this place structurally intact against the ground pressure below. So part of our...
They measure it.
And we tried our best to keep it at a consistent level. We do have a water pump next to that staircase right there that keeps and that helps it keep it at a level 10 inches. So part of our evil plan here is that you guys take as many photos and as much video as you can so that you can share this amongst your friends and family so that they too will be curious enough to visit us just as you did today. That is my evil plan. That is what we're sticking with. Is it working so far?
Yes.
Perfect then.
Don't you have a light show sometimes?
Yes, but that's a separate one.
Ah.
So, excuse me.
I got a question about what you used to do down here.
Go ahead, John.
They used to,
Yes.
they did something that it sounded like it was raining. That was years ago when I made a trip down here.
Oh, you mean Harvey or the hurricane?
And there was water running somewhere and it sounded like it was raining.
She's talking about when she took a tour.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest installation that we have. Around that bend, or around that staircase, there's a water pump that, as mentioned before, kind of helps to add to the ambiance, kind of breaks the illusion during the actual light show that we have inside the system. So that's what you're recording. So this is where I'm going to invite you guys to do one thing for me, and that is to scream your hearts out. But supposing that you guys can follow instructions. How this is going to work is that I'm going to be shining my light upwards. On the count of 3, I want you guys to give me your best roar cry, roar shout, whatever you want to call it, to each their own. But I want you guys to really pour in the frustration that we're building up since Barrel. If not for yourselves, do so for me, because I struggled a lot to get electricity back in my home. So, on the count of 3, I'll let you guys scream, but whenever I point my light down, I want you guys to stop completely. That way you can actually hear and listen to the echo that you guys make. Are you ready? Cameras and video are more than welcome if you decide to record. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations, you guys have officially creeped me out. Now, you might be surprised to learn, but again, we have a record here of close to 15 to even 20 seconds. So it really depends on how loud and how extended the note is. Obviously, the longer you can hold the note, the longer the sound will be produced. So, consonants, and a lot of the consonants are very short or short-lived. And typically what you want in this kind of environment are long, sustained notes. Otherwise, if you try to have a conversation with the other end of the system, as sound travels back and forth, they're going to be crashing against each other, acting like waves in the open ocean, and kind of canceling each other out. So, next one will be a song in English. Hope you guys like it. Who is
We've been wanting to paddle the Bayou for a little while, so this one actually shows you where all the put-in spots are, which is pretty nice.
First off, welcome to the Buffalo Bayou Park Cistern. My name is Beto, this is Marcella. As your tour guide, it's just our job to make sure that all of you make it out through the same door you just used. But to do so in a safe, prompt manner, we do have some ground rules that we do expect you all to follow to the letter. First and foremost is that we don't allow any eating, drinking, smoking, or chewing gum inside the system. That includes any water bottles, thermos, candles, coffee that you may have bought from outside. I must ask you to place it on top of the table right here at the very front. Anything else that you may be chewing but you can't ingest, I must ask you to go ahead and dispose of it in this trash can. Anybody? Confess now, forever hold your sins. So the reason why I am adamant about this rule is because the cistern is 98 years old. Its birthday was actually this past 13th of August. So in order to preserve it as best we can, we are doing our best, and that includes asking all of you to not eat or drink inside the cistern and to follow the rules that we have in place. So if at any point in time I do catch you guys eating or drinking anything inside, I will be asking you guys politely to leave. Do we all understand?
Yes.
So, the cistern will be very dimly lit, kind of like the tunnel you guys currently in. If this, for whatever reason, makes you guys uncomfortable, feel free to let me or Marcella know. As your tour guides, we can be the ones to escort you out if at any point in time you need to take a breath of fresh air. But keep in mind, the ones outside, we will not allow re-entry just out of common courtesy for other guests inside the cistern. Do you understand?
Yes.
So as you're walking along the pathway, you're bound to notice some spots that are wet on this relatively narrow 6-foot corridor inside the cistern. So as you're walking around the space, I must ask you to please use caution and don't run inside the cistern. Thankfully, there aren't any small children with us. Thankfully, there aren't any small children with us. But again, the rules that apply for young adults and above, including seniors, do not run inside the cistern. Spare me and Marcella that we can work at filling out an extra report later on tonight, all right? So, any questions or conversations you guys may have, I must remind you, the cistern is essentially an echo chamber, one with a 15 to even 20-second delay. So out of consideration for other people inside the tour.
You're looking at me, why you looking at me?
Point is that it can get really loud, it can get really distorted, and so for me to actually be able to do my job, I must ask you to please keep it to a maximum rate whisper. I understand all of you guys are human, so am I for the most part. So I'm not asking you guys to keep it as silent as the grave once inside the cistern, but I will ask you to again keep it to a maximum of a whisper. If I can hear it, chances are other people can hear it. And chances are, if other people can hear it, they're not really getting the most out of the experience inside the cistern. So again, out of consideration for other people, keep your conversations, if any, to a maximum of a whisper. Do we understand?
Yes.
So, okay. And come toward the front. Anybody else? We'll start with your names. I would recommend to please go ahead and edge up towards the front, please.
If you're hard of hearing,
If you're hard of hearing, I encourage you to please come up towards the front. I do not have a microphone nor a speaker, so this is as loud as I can get.
is he hard of hearing?
Thank y'all for visiting.
Go ahead and fill up the space, guys. Do not block the entryway. You will have plenty of opportunity to take your photos. Go ahead and try to fill up the space, guys. We are close to 30 people. Go ahead and try to fill up the space. Thank you. So. So now that everyone is here, allow me then to tell you a few facts about the cistern. Around 1925, the city of Houston had commissioned W.R. Hallway to design this cistern with a maximum capacity of 15 million gallons of water, which was supposed to satisfy the population in Houston back when we had close to 30 to even 40,000 people within city limits. Around 1926, a local construction company took up this project and managed to build it completely from scratch, and did so within a time frame of 95 calendar days. Now, I'm not a civil engineer, but that sounds rather miraculous, wouldn't you say? Especially considering how long it takes them to fix the freeways as well as how many potholes have got around the city. Now, this project cost taxpayers at the time $152,770, which in today's economy, accounted for inflation, rounds about to close to 2.5 million. Still a bargain today, considering that it took them roughly close to 800,000 pounds of steel reinforcement, as well as 6,000 cubic yards of 3 different kinds of cement, marine grade cement among these. All of that material was taken to create all 221 columns that are currently intact and in one piece, and currently hoisting up the 10 inches of cement that span the entirety of this almost 90,000 square foot cistern right above our heads, as well as the load-bearing walls that support that weight that stretch along the perimeter of the cistern, which will start off close to 18 inches at the very bottom and will end at 8 inches at the very top. One more thing I'll call your attention to is the slight inclination or divot visible from left to right. You will note that the left stands at about 12 inches tall, the right stands at about 10 inches tall. It's built that way on purpose in order to allow gravity to do a lot of the work in recirculating the water that used to be fed from an intake pipe over there, which we're going to visit soon, and then was drained out through a drainage pipe over here on the right. And then from there, the water was pumped out roughly 2 miles in this direction to a water pumping facility, which to any of you locals here from Houston, you might recognize it as a downtown aquarium. Once upon a time, that was a water pumping facility that supplied the city.
Wow.
Now, you might be curious as to why we keep water in here at all times, if not the point of this to be completely decommissioned was to drain it out and leave it abandoned, right? Well, you guys are half correct, but we actually have a good reason as to why we keep water in here despite it being decommissioned. Reasons of which I actually hope to explore with you guys as you walk around the space itself. Is that okay?
Yep.
Awesome then. So to start things off, we're gonna start in 1836, when the Allen brothers arrived to the area now known as Houston, using the conflux or intersection between White Oak and Buffalo Bayou as a staging and docking area, allowing them to transport goods and people in and out of the city with relative ease. And from there, the city would grow into the bustling metropolis that you see today. People back in those days really didn't care where they got their water from, so long as it was clean and drinkable. So they would do what they can. They dug shallow wells, collected rainwater, and even on occasion, boil Bayou water if they were ever in a pinch. This lack of a centralized water system meant that the city of Houston was very ill prepared for the next line of tragedies that would follow, namely the fire of 1873, when a massive fire tore through the majority of Market Square and even burned down City Hall. This painful tragedy made it clear to the city of Houston that they were in desperate need of an actual water system, one that could satisfy the masses but also fight off any potential fire hazards. That same year, 1873, the Houston Water Works Company was established and later on was entrusted with the responsibility of supplying water to the city. Fast forward to 1886, when aquifers or groundwater was discovered beneath the soil of Houston, roughly 180 feet below the surface. This clean artesian well water quickly became Houston's preferred source of drinking water, as it was cleaner, had a better taste, and you didn't necessarily have to purify or boil water before consumption, or that was a general belief. But as the populace grew, the demand for this clean drinking water also grew, exponentially so. And in order to satisfy this new demand for drinking water, the Houston Water Works Company decided against the best interest of the clients and started to pump Bayou water onto the main lines. This quickly angered a lot of Houstonians, as there were now very vocal complaints being levied against the company, some of which included that the water was murky, had a gravelly texture, had a bad taste, and an even worse smell. And others would go so far as to call it tar water because of how low the standard quality had actually dropped. In the face of these accusations and allegations, like any large corporation back in those days, the Houston Water Works Company basically lied to the face of the citizenry, reassuring them that they were only getting clean artesian well water from the aquifers discovered back in 1886, and that Bayou water was being specifically used and reserved in case of fire emergencies. But again, this was very much a lie, as mounds of evidence were continuously piling up against the company. Part of the evidence I would like to share on the tour is the fact that in 1903, a plumber was called to the downtown police station in order to restore water utilities to women's detention cells. He was successful, but in doing so, he had removed a 3.5-foot dead eel that was clogging up the pipes, so something relatively obviously. Now, as you may know, eels don't live in aquifers, especially not 180 feet below the surface. Eels, any questions, I'll ask you to hold them until the end. Thank you.
Could you speak just a little bit slower, because at the back we can hear you, but we can't understand it because it's fast.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
If you guys are still hard of hearing, I would encourage you to edge up towards the front if you can, if you need to. Now, as you can imagine, eels don't live in aquifers, especially not 180 feet below the surface. They typically like to live in slow-moving, open bodies of water, like a lake, or in this case, a bayou. So, in the face of this overwhelming evidence, the Houston Water Works Company was found out. And this eel had become the straw that broke the camel's back, as in once and for all proof that the Houston Water Works was not only lying about the quality of the services, but they were willing to poison people in order to meet the quotas. So, right where Marcella is at, that is going to be our first site feature. That is one of 4 safety hatches located around the cistern, and those were the only doors in or out of the facility. In order to gain access, the maintenance crew would have to drain the water inside the cistern to an acceptable level, lift up that 55-pound hatch. If you guys are interested, you're more than welcome to kind of scoot that way so you can see it. But they would have to lift up that 55-pound hatch, climb down the ladder with very minimal lighting and whatever tools they can carry, down that staircase in order to gain access to the pillars, the floors, the walls, and even the ceilings of the cistern. But do keep in mind that the railing that you see on the staircase, even the walkway, and even the LED lights and the walkway itself were not part of the original design and weren't even installed until after 2013. So the maintenance crew that worked in and out of the cistern would have to be very careful to not slip down the steep embankment, potentially getting lost and trapped inside the cistern. Thankfully, there aren't any deaths or accidents pertaining to this kind of activity, but we don't have a whole lot of records or paperwork pertaining to this kind of activity, so we really don't know. But then again, now that all 30 plus of you guys are here, I really hope you can come to appreciate the hard work that went into preserving this space for now almost 98 years this past August. Now, back to that eel. Following the shame and distrust, following the shame and distrust and general disgust over this incident, all of the anger that now poured onto the United States Supreme Court, who ultimately ruled that the use of Bayou water was not strictly prohibited and banned for any purpose, including firefighting. So, in the face of the shame and distrust that the Houston Water Works essentially created for themselves, the city of Houston decided to ultimately buy out the company completely, and from there started to provide water as a municipal utility for the city. As a public entity, the Houston Water Works began expanding the services, including the water system itself. By 1925, they completed construction on a water pumping facility, which as mentioned before, was later converted into the downtown network nowadays. But back in those days, that pump was able to pump out nearly 20 million gallons of groundwater a day. And by 90 million gallon covered concrete reinforced reservoir, which we now affectionately call the Cistern, since the walls up a little bit better. Now, while the city was taking great strides in really improving the water system and the pipes, very little was done in regards to cleaning or sanitizing the water within. So much so that by 1928, state and federal organizations started to look into our tap water. And what they found was very concerning. They had actually found a number of health contaminants and pollutants inside our drinking water. So much so that they decided to leave behind a long list of recommendations as to how to fix these issues with our then city councilman, who ultimately decided that it would have been too costly, too expensive to even start thinking about cleaning the water and providing clean water to the city. So little to nothing was done in regards to sanitizing the water until the flood of 1929, when a massive flood tore through the majority of when a massive flood caused the Buffalo Bayou to overflow, and by extension, flood the central water plant by over 20 feet, leaving it completely inoperable. So in the face of a potential water shortage, the city of Houston had asked privately owned wells to turn the water onto the main lines. The only issue with these wells is that they were meant for private use. So a lot of them were already contaminated from agricultural runoff or heavy metals from the factories. So in the face of yet another potential health hazard, this then prompted the city health official to ask and warn all Houstonians to boil the water before consumption. Sounds a bit familiar nowadays when it's saying. So, in order to combat this health issue, the city just decided to chlorinate and sanitize the water from the operational water plants that it still had left behind. The only issue with this plan is that we were very short on chlorination kits following the flood, so sanitization wasn't necessarily worthwhile practice for these companies. So, ultimately, what the city of Houston was forced to do was to borrow chlorination kits from publicly owned school swimming pools. Now, I have drank pool water in the past. It's not necessarily the best tasting, nor in large quantities would it be the safest, but it was a start in the sanitization issue. And by 1934, the city of Houston had achieved full certification of its water system, meaning that the water back in those days was made as clean as possibly can be, and the majority of the pollutants that were discovered back in 1929, if not eliminated, were at least heavily regulated. And even to this day, we still enjoy a full certification of our water system, meaning that the water within the main today some of the best still within the country. So this here is our 30-inch intake pipe. Now, back in those days, this would only run aquifer water, discovered back in 1886 beneath the soil of Houston. But nowadays, this only runs city of Houston tap water, which would be no different from what you get from your sink or your hose. Now, back in those days, the majority of the water that has ever graced the walls of the cistern would be primarily fed through this main pipe. Now, you might be curious as to why we keep water in here at all times. Well, the first reason I can give you is actually structural in nature. If you guys are familiar with cement pools or other similar structures, due to fire marshal regulations, we have to keep a certain amount of water in here in order to prevent the ground pressure below from pushing up and causing additional cracks and leaks that for this kind of installation we don't want. So this amount of water actually helps us keep the system intact, as the weight helps to push down against the bottom of the system, keeping it structurally sound and intact, free of any cracks or leaks, as far as we know. Now, the other two reasons I can give you guys is the beautiful aesthetic image created throughout the surface of the cistern, thanks to that reflection on top of the surface of the water. So, I'm gonna hold off on that until the lighting demonstration. The other reason I can give you is the dense nature, or the dense surface of the water helps me to project my voice all the more better, because if this was completely dry and buried, exposing the silt and other gravel left inside the cistern after so many years of use, my echo would be a lot more muffled and wouldn't be so clear or crisp. So this surface of the water, this dense material, actually helps you to bounce off the sound a lot better than if this was completely dry or barren. But I'm gonna hold off on those two reasons so I can give you guys a proper demonstration and show off for you guys at the end of the tour, all right? So now that sanitization or cleaning the water had been resolved, production was the biggest issue we were faced with. As by 1938, the city was consuming close to 73 million gallons of groundwater a day. Meanwhile, our dainty water system, including the cistern, could only keep up with 43 million gallons of groundwater a day. In order to prevent another water shortage, the city decided to add additional pumps and wells along the aquifers discovered back in 1886. And by 1938, we were successful in pumping out close to 130 million gallons of groundwater a day. While this sounds great on paper, this rapid evacuation or pumping out of groundwater had not caused a problem of subsidence. So if you're unfamiliar with the term subsidence, think of it kind of like a seed bowl, where basically the top street level becoming bottom basement level in order to fill in the gap and void left behind by the rapidly shrinking water table below. In the face of this issue, the city of Houston decided to act proactively, as this issue had affected certain parts of the heights and some areas of downtown where residential and commercial buildings had sunk 15 feet their actual height. To illustrate this better, the pillars nearest to the embankment here stand close to 17.5 foot, meaning that your house could be resting right here at the top of the year, but as time wore on, your house would more likely be close to here, thanks to that problem of subsidence. So, in order to prevent yet a widespread issue of subsidence, the city of Houston decided to dam up certain sections of the San Francisco River to create the first of 3 artificial lakes, founded around 1954, Lake Houston. And thanks to Lake Houston, we were able to gain access to close to 22 billion gallons of surface water a day. And by the late 70s, they created 2 more artificial lakes, Lake Livingston, Lake Conroe, and all 3 artificial lakes combined will give us access to close to 120 billion gallons of surface water per day. Now, when you compare the two, 120 billion versus 15 million, it really starts to make the system look like another drop in a large bucket. And it really put into question how cost effective it is to heat up such an antiquated water reservoir. So much so that, considering the fact that the city was already using surface water, not groundwater, the cistern became less and less used until eventually it was officially abandoned. Around the early 2000s, the maintenance crew had actually found out that the cistern had developed several airline fractures and several irreparable leaks along the walls of the perimeter of the cistern, which prevented the cistern from actually filling up to its maximum capacity of 15 million gallons. So because of this, and considering the fact that the city was already using surface water, the city ultimately decided to just decommission the cistern officially in 2007. Thankfully for us, around 2010, the Buffalo Bayou Partnership began repurposing the land between Sabine Street and Shepherd Drive so you guys can enjoy Buffalo Bayou Park as you see it today. Now, they knew that the system existed, they just didn't really know what to expect. And in order to speculate how easy it would be to kind of flatten this out and turn it into a parking lot, the park managers and speculators decided to look at it for themselves. But thankfully for us, they fell in love with all 221 steel reinforced columns intact in one piece, the beautiful reflection across the water, as well as the beautiful sound of my echo reaching back to you guys. But one more thing I'll call your attention to is the raw industrial beauty of the walls and the ceiling, which if you haven't noticed, I invite you to take a closer look. What I want you guys to notice is the wooden grain indentation left behind by the construction method that they used so long ago, which was called board form concrete pouring, which basically means that the workers would lay 2 parallel boards close together, poured in the concrete, allowed it to set, and once cured, they would have pried off the boards and then repeated the process until they had reached their desired height. Now, they fell so in love with this raw aesthetic quality, they decided to emulate it in different parts of the park, particularly the tunnel where you guys entered the cistern, as well as the visitor center where you guys checked in a way keeping us a little bit more grounded and connected to the cistern as a whole. Now, this year is our 3rd site feature. That is our spillway. I encourage you guys to turn around so you can take a better look. But the spillway is basically the only structural fail-safe to prevent any overpressurization inside the cistern. So, how the spillway would work is that inside there is a hatch that from this angle we cannot see. the maintenance workers would open up the hatch, notice the water is filling over the spillway, and then from there would have decided to shut off all 9 black water valves that used to be located around the cistern itself, but nowadays they are only located up front of the visitor center for you guys to enjoy. Take your photos, play around with them, do your yoga poses, to each their own. I'm not going to judge you on how you use them, but I will ask you to not break them, please. Okay. So allowing us to install the railing, the LED lights, as well as the walkway that you're currently using. On top of hosting historical guided tours, we also host a number of artistic and musical venues made available throughout the year. Our most recent edition is called Aha Real by Rachel Rosen. Rachel Rosen basically wanted to envision and encapsulate the story of the Velveteen Rabbit inside the walls of the cistern, using LED screens located around the perimeter of the cistern, allowing you guys to not only visualize but kind of experience the show in a very unique way inside the cistern. So, if you guys are interested in this or any other artistic or musical venues made available throughout the years, or at least soon, we would encourage you to sign up to the newsletter. We'll be more than happy to keep you guys well informed as to when these events or when these things become available. Other than that, we are now fast approaching my favorite corner. I know, 1 and 4, what makes it so special. But let's go ahead and come around the roundabout. This is where I'm going to invite you guys to go ahead and participate in your own sound demonstration. But for that, I need to ask you to kind of hold on to the railing if you can. So we're going to end questions if you have. So this is where I'm going to invite you guys to do one thing for me, and that is to scream your hearts out. But supposing that you guys can follow instructions. How this is going to work is that I'm going to be shining my light upwards. On the count of 3, I want you guys to give me your best roar cry, roar shout, whatever you want to call it, to each their own. But I want you guys to really pour in the frustrations that have been building up since Barrel. If not for yourselves, do so for me, because I struggled a lot to get electricity back in my home. So, on the count of 3, I'll let you guys scream, but whenever I point my light down, I want you guys to stop completely. That way we can actually hear and listen to the echo that you guys make. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. Cameras and video are more than welcome if you decide to record. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations, you guys have officially creeped me out. Now, you might be surprised to learn, but again, we have a record here of close to 15 to even 20 seconds. So it really depends on how loud and how extended the note is. Obviously, the longer you hold the note, the longer the sound will be produced. So, if you guys happen to have any questions, I know you did. Now is a perfect time to answer them. So your question was in regards to the lighting. So coincidentally, we actually have additional lighting. They are located around the base of the pillars. And that helps to kind of illuminate the space during our parking quarters. Any other questions? In the back? In the middle? Yes. So those are LED screens. And those are LED screens. Those are being used to kind of project images inside the cistern. So that's not a real thing. But anybody else? That's going to be a lighting demonstration. It's going to be part of the lighting demonstration, but you're going to be surprised by the answer. So, any other questions? If not, I'm going to ask you guys to kind of squeeze as closely as possible between these. Try your best to squeeze in between these two pillars. I understand you're close to 30, but try your best to squeeze in between these two pillars, since the best view for the lighting demonstration will literally be right down the middle. So again, try your best to squeeze in between these two pillars, between the left and the right. So there should be plenty of space over here towards the left if you guys want to. So this we did unfortunately get the not to leave like maximum capacity. Yeah, we managed to pump it out roughly 2 days. And how do you feel? What about it? So that's going to be part of the line demonstration. So Marcella, you do me a favor and kind of turn off the lights, please. Thank you. And if I can, kind of squeeze in between the middle.
Sorry.
So excuse me, guys. I need the space in the middle. Sorry, excuse me. Thank you, guys. And if you haven't already, please take out your phones, take out your cameras. I work terribly fast through this section. All right, hope you guys are ready. This is where the magic is going to start. And don't worry about the shadow, that's just where they found my body. And it doesn't matter where I point the light, you can still see the bottom of this place. And this is something that we call the infinity view or infinity well, because as you can tell, the lower I point the light, the deeper this place seems to get. And again, it doesn't matter where I point the light, the effect still persists throughout the surface of the water inside the cistern. So I omitted or didn't really mention the amount of water that we have inside the cistern at all times, so that everyone here can get a chance and play a bit of a guessing game in regards to how tall the water is in here. Would anybody like to volunteer and answer in regards to miles, meters, feet?
10 feet tall.
10 feet tall. Anybody else?
Yeah.
6 inches. Anybody else?
Million gallons.
Million gallons. We need inches, centimeters.
Oh, inches.
Inches, centimeters, feet.
1 foot.
1 foot. 24 inches. Got it. Anybody else?
3 foot.
3 feet. Going once, going twice on the Price is Right. Alrighty. You might be surprised to learn we only have about 10 inches of water here at all times. So really what you're looking at is just purely a reflection of the ceiling on the surface of the water.
So
But
that's
despite
all you need to keep the balance on the earth there.
Yes. So despite that we only have 10 inches, this amount of water still accounts for close to 3/4 gallons of water. And that helps us to keep this place structurally intact against the ground pressure below. So part of our...
They measure it.
And we tried our best to keep it at a consistent level. We do have a water pump next to that staircase right there that helps it keep it at a level 10 inches. So part of our evil plan here is that you guys take as many photos and as much video as you can so that you can share this amongst your friends and family so that they too will be curious enough to visit us just as you did today. That is my evil plan. That is what we're sticking with. Is it working so far?
Yes.
Perfect then.
Don't you have a light show sometimes?
Yes, but that's a separate one.
Ah.
So, excuse me.
Judy, I got a question about what you used to do down here.
Go ahead, John.
They used to,
Yes.
they did something that it sounded like it was raining. And that was years ago when I made a trip down here.
Oh, you mean Harvey or the hurricane?
And there was water running somewhere and it sounded like it was raining.
She's talking about when she took a tour.
Got it. Yeah, that's probably the hardest installation that we have. Around that bend, or around that staircase, there's a water pump that, as mentioned before, kind of helps to add to the ambiance, kind of breaks the illusion during the actual light show that they have inside the system. So that's what you're for. Song in Mongolian, a lot of the words and a lot of the consonants are very short or short-lived. And typically what you want in this kind of environment are long, sustained notes. Otherwise, if you try to have a conversation with the other end of the cistern, as sound travels back and forth, they're going to be crashing against each other, acting like waves in the open ocean and kind of canceling each other out. So, next one will be a song in English. Hope you guys like it. Brought to you by the Cistern.
Yeah.
If you guys happen to have any additional questions, I would encourage you to please ask them at the visitor center front desk. But other than that, thank you very much for making that company. I'm sure the Cistern appreciates you just as much as I did. But other than that, please start following me on the way out. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Beto.
Thank you.
That was great.
Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you. You have a lovely voice. Thank you.
You could tell.